Ladies and gentlemen, this fireside chat will dive deep in how to combat this omnipresent enemy in the ever-changing complex digital medium. In order to unveil the topic, please welcome Mr. Deidra Gupta, CTO and founder of MFilter, and Mr. Dibantu Malik, Deputy Managing Director of Mediacom. And please welcome them.
Hi, and glad to be part of this session with Dibindu, and I'm excited to be talking at this forum. My name is Dheeraj. I am the CTO and co-founder at MFilter. MFilter is focused on helping advertisers save their budget from being wasted on ad fraud, as well as helping them against brand safety. We are actively working in the space to help advertisers improve their ROI from their current campaigns. Devendu, would you want to quickly introduce yourself and then we get into the conversation?
Sure. Again, glad to be present here and great to meet you guys. And I am Dibantu. I am the Deputy Managing Director of Mediacom Vietnam. So we are the second biggest media agency in Vietnam, part of the Group M family, which is one of the biggest agencies in Vietnam and the world as a whole. And we have been working for clients like P&G, Coca-Cola, Sony, Bayer, Sabeco, Vinamilk for the past few years. Glad to be here and glad to be part of this discussion. So yeah, Dheeraj, fire away.
So Dibendu, what is the status of ad fraud brand safety in Vietnam? I'm sure you deal with this topic pretty regularly in your when you're interacting with clients, when you're interacting with publishers. Give us a sense of what are the kind of conversations you're having in this space right now in Vietnam, and what are advertisers saying about it?
Yeah, so viewability, ad fraud, and brand safety has become definitely one of the most sought about issues in Vietnam in the last 4 or 5 years, and the market has moved pretty strongly, and a lot of starting with the global advertisers like Unilever, P&G, Nestle. They started focusing on viewability, ad fraud, and brand safety at around 2016, 2017. And then we see even the local advertisers like Vinamilk, like Sabeco, they are also focusing a lot in terms of viewability, because that is viewability, ad fraud, because those are some of the metric that basically gives you an idea about the effectiveness and the efficiency of your overall digital campaigns, and hence the awareness and the intention to basically use this matrix have grown manifold in the last couple of years or last 3-4 years.
No, very interesting, Devendu. That I'm glad to know that topics like these are now catching attention, and not just from global brands but also local, regional brands. I agree with you that in the last couple of years, especially because of COVID, where efficiencies have become very important and focus on performance is becoming more and more important. I doubt that there is a brand campaign which doesn't have a performance metric currently attached to it. I think the advertisers' interest for making sure that their budgets are not wasted and their on brand safe inventory is becoming more and more important. And it makes business sense also, right? If you're spending money on bad traffic, your ROI is not going to be there, right? It's just money down the drain, which means Absolutely. That if you want to focus on improving your brand visibility, your performance, your click-through rates, your visits on your websites and landing pages, all of it will require an active protection against ad fraud, right? Irrespective of the kind of platform you're working on.
Sure. Means initially when the VVA started, the whole conversations about viewability, verification, and audience started. The focus was very much on viewability, and for the CPG brands whose campaigns are more brand-led, right? Which focuses more on awareness, more on consideration, who has to talk to the consumers about the product benefits. Viewability still remains a very important metric for them, and understandably so, because it is they are talking to the client, they are talking to the consumers about the product, about the brand. It is essential for them to at least have the viewability in place so that they are sure that the consumers are seeing their ads. Having said so, in the last couple of years, and especially the pandemic has accelerated this process. The the focus on the lower funnel of communication is seeing a overall increased focus. And what we see is that there are a lot of new categories who are coming into this field, like, for example, say real estate, for example, or financial services, who are very much led by performance marketing. For them, having leads, having arrivals, having traffics is as important as awareness and consideration for the brand. And for them, the metrics that we were talking about, like CTRs or arrival rates, bounce rates, lead generation, becomes very important. And in this particular segment, therefore, ad fraud becomes even more important, because they would like to be sure that the leads that are getting generated, the arrivals that are happening on their websites are not some random bots, but are actual consumers who are interested in the products and who can be converted with more intensified marketing capabilities in a later state, if not now.
Absolutely, Devendra. In fact, maybe this is one myth which I keep hearing from advertisers. Maybe we can use this forum to bust that. Is that viewability and ad fraud are not connected with each other. Viewability is basically saying whether the ad was viewed or not. And for all practical purposes, most of the good publishers will never have 100% viewability, because viewability is basically a consumer's choice. The customer decides whether he wants to scroll down the website or not, and a publisher cannot do anything about that. In fact, if you actually have sources which have 100% viewability, then most likely that traffic is fraudulent, because human traffic can never be 100% viewable. Only machine traffic can be 100% viewable, right? So I think what we are seeing in more developed markets consistently is that viewability is now becoming lesser and lesser weightage and interest from advertisers, because impressions and viewability is just one aspect of why you're running your campaign. When you are looking at leads, you're looking at visits, you're looking at CTRs, you're looking at whether that traffic performed or not. Viewability is a very minuscule aspect. What you need to look at is how do you make sure that your traffic is fraud proof and is not bot traffic. By the way, we all experience bots in our day-to-day lives these days, right? So we have Alexa, for example, which is a bot, right? It is a voice bot. Similarly, we have a lot of bots which are continuously pulling data. All of us use a lot of SEM tools. SEM tools are effectively scraping data from Google search to give us insights of keyword and ranking, right? So we know that bots are very, very powerful these days. They can simulate human interaction. They can simulate human voice. They can go to the level of simulating a conversation without the other person realizing that this is a bot. But when advertisers are told about the same thing about visiting a website and viewing an impression or clicking on it, it seems that they feel that no, that is not possible. Bots can not only see ads, of course, they can click on them, they can fill up lead forms, they can fill up registration forms, they can actually bypass captcha codes as well, which means that looking at only viewability and impression level fraud analysis is probably not sufficient anymore, and down the funnel metrics are extremely important for identifying the true picture of fraud.
Absolutely. Means viewability is definitely takes you to some level. For example, it is still quite important. Means if you are a CPG consumer, viewability ensures that the ad that you are putting out is viewed. And as you said, ad fraud is completely different than viewability. So a bot can view it. So you need to take in viewability data and ad fraud data and compare it and make sure that both of them are are in place for you to be sure that it is working properly. But yeah, viewability in some places can give us some really nice insights as such as to whether which, if you are running multiple creatives, which creative is getting more more viewability, and that gives you an understanding on which content is working in the overall marketing channel funnel. Having said that, it is also true that as we move more and more towards the lower funnel, viewability is not the only metric that we need to. And you are absolutely right that in the lower funnel, the bot activities probably are much more important to have a tab on. And some of the ways that the advertisers are trying to weed out the bot activities are like, for example, a very basic thing is like OTP verification, right? So that you are ensuring that the phone number that is being input as a is not fraudulent. But this has got its downsides because it breaks the consumer journey. There are a lot of drop-offs and conversions happen, and the conversion rate really drops. So what is also will be great to know that if there is a real-time way of understanding that okay, these are some of the bot responses that we are getting, and if there are ways of weeding out those bot responses, getting the actual responses on a more real-time basis and not wait for the end of the campaign. And that helps us given the technologies like deep learning coming in, that helps us to basically have a very have data whose fidelity you cannot question, and that can basically then be used for retargeting, remarketing, where you are more sure of the fidelity of the data. So definitely a solution that is a real-time way of identifying ad fraud on the lower funnel can be really, really helpful for sure.
Well, Dipendu, thank you so much for that. So that's precisely what MFilter it does. We focus not just on impressions, but also down the funnel, and we tie them up together to give you a real-time insight of identifying the fraud. Not only that, we are actually are able to take action against that and make sure your campaign is protected against it. It's not just an audit report, but you can actually improve the ROI of your campaign by blocking out bad traffic, which happens automatic in real time. In fact, Devendu, I'll touch base on another aspect of which I think is important. As more and more spend market share is going towards, say, the duopoly of Google and Facebook, and typically there you would be running a more CPC based campaign, right? Instead of a CPM based campaign, a Google search is a CPC campaign, and so on and so forth. What that means is that the story of fraud detection and ROI calculation needs to go beyond impressions, need to go towards clicks, visits, and down the funnel. Because if your cost for your marketing campaign is based on clicks, then there is no point of identifying bad impressions, right? Because bad impressions is not even something which you're paying for. You're paying for clicks, then might as well know that on clicks, what was your fraud level, right? That's where your money is getting wasted. If there is a bad impression which didn't result in a click, then there is no harm, no foul, right? You didn't lose anything. That's another way to look at
it. And that is basically how your campaign is set up and what are the objectives of the brand also, right? Because a lot of CPG brands, their objective is very clear cut. It is about reach, it is about frequency, it is about driving awareness and consideration among the consumers. And for them, those impressions needs to be not bad, right? So that needs to be settled. But of course, means with the pandemic, with e-com getting much more part of our new normal, definitely a metric like ROAS becomes a very powerful metric when you are trying to basically drive traffic, drive online sales. Or a metric like click-through rates or ultimately ROAS is something that will probably drive your decisions a little bit more than viewability. But at the same time, like viewability, as I said, can be a good metric to understand your overall communication, which message is cutting through, which is not cutting through, and that gives you an understanding of which one, how to communicate with the consumers, what is resonating with the consumers. So I think it still remains an important factor.
No, absolutely, absolutely. Okay, let's spend a little bit of time on brand safety. I believe Vietnam has been, really active on brand safety compared to many other Southeast Asia countries. I understand that, a couple of years ago there was a lot of push from the government side also on making sure that campaigns are brand safe, and advertisers have been focusing on getting brand safety through. What's your opinion on how Vietnam is dealing with brand safety right now, and what's your take on it?
Yeah, so brand safety is again one thing that the advertisers have started taking really, really seriously. And even in Vietnam, it is absolutely essential that the ads are served in brand safe environment. However, the definition of brand safe is something that needs a little bit deeper analysis. And with each market, there are numerous cultural or social nuances that is not captured with the generic brand safety filters that we use, right? So, like for example, some of the advertisers in Vietnam are moving into a mechanism called whitelisting of channels, which basically means that they are asking the agencies to go through the channels that they can be present on. So not only is it like a very time consuming and manual effort, it also escalates the cost of the client, right? And hence, like any, but taking the regional aspect of a brand safe environment is also extremely important. And that is why actually Group M has come up with a responsible framework, which basically takes into account several factors, including local and credible news, into consideration when we basically deal with our publishers on what is brand safe environment. So we have been working very closely with a number of publishers to ensure that the inventory that we source are safe for our clients, and we basically are delivering quality inventory and inventory supply for our clients.
No, absolutely. I think it's important to be said that brand safety is a very regional aspect. It is a very contextual aspect. Something which is brand safe for US may not be brand safe for Vietnamese market. The cultural requirements demand that the brand safety needs to be looked at a local lens. In fact, that's one aspect which I think is very important, because a lot of the global MNCs, CPG brands, etc., many times they use a brand safety tool which is very Americanized from their background, which is probably headquarter driven. But the question which I think advertisers need to ask for and understand is that is a tool which is coming in from a different part of the world, will it be able to cover the local nuances or not? And if the local nuances are not being covered, then you will never have a proper accuracy, in which means that you will actually be removing placements which are good, and you'll actually be putting ads on placements which are bad, right? Which defeats the whole purpose. And then the whole loop of, I'm sure, manual work, manual filtering, cleanup, whitelisting, for example, will severely impact the scale of your campaign, right? You will severely impact the amount of reach you can have. I think all of this is, in this age and world, is technically solvable. Automated analysis with different local languages is very easily possible. Of course, it requires that the tools used are supporting those local languages. And I think that's a question which advertisers need to start asking, that what is the localization of a brand safety tool provider? Because English is not the preferred language or the only language where the bulk of the data is consumed. I'm sure in Vietnamese, 70-80% plus of content would be in local languages.
Sure. And that's what it means. A localized regional brand safety tool can be extremely important for the marketers here. Means I will just give you an example. There are a lot of marketers who are really who do not have the trust to go on to open exchange buying for programmatic, right? Because they just don't feel that they're don't have the feeling of having a brand safe environment, because open exchange is really something that cannot be controlled as like a IO buy or even a direct buy on programmatic. And having a localized tool that understands the nuances of the market and basically customizes the brand safety according to the market will basically open all these opportunities and drive efficiency and effectiveness for the marketers in a huge way.
No, absolutely. Thank you so much, Devendu, for that. I think summarizing, ad fraud and brand safety are two very important aspects. Digital campaigns need to be fraud proof and need to be brand safe. I don't think anyone doubts that anymore.
Sure.
The only question is that, are you implementing the right tools and looking at the right metrics for yourself? My recommendation is, please consider down the funnel metrics. Please consider down the funnel information beyond an impression. Of course, if you are a heavily brand oriented customer and heavily focused on only reach and visibility, then of course impression and viewability are important. But apart from that, I think for almost all advertisers, making sure that down the funnel information is looked at and tracked and identified for fraud traffic can improve your ROI and ROAS very, very dramatically. Similarly, for brand safety, I would encourage advertisers to really consider and challenge whether their tools are localized and have the regional context, because brand safety is a regional aspect. It cannot be a Western influenced analysis, because each region has its own acceptability of what is right and wrong. With that, I think we're out of time. Devendu, any last points from your side?
No, I think you summarized more or less what we discussed. Like, sure, means as we move more into the lower funnel data, looking into our ROAS or conversion is becoming more and more important. But as you touched, like for clients who are still brand-led, viewability remains a very important part. As we said, that brand safety, any localized regional nuances need to be taken into account, and that helps any marketer to feel much more convinced to use any publisher and open more possibilities.
Great. Thank you so much, Devendu, for your time. I think it was great interacting with you, and all the best in having this conversation with your advertiser clients. And thank you so much for your time.
Thanks, Dheeraj. Thank you so much.
Thank you, both of you, and it's really interesting topic. Ladies and gentlemen, and now we move to another topic. It's about Mad Brands build brand power. And see you in a few seconds.